Hello everybody. This is where we left off. A character that's got some eye motion and some head motion, but he doesn't really have any expressions. We're going to have to go and give him some. First, unfortunately, we're going to have a short little episode about the pipeline. The pipeline is how you get your assets from wherever they start into the game world. And it's important to know how it works and what you're going to need to do, because otherwise you'll trip up all over yourself. What am I talking about? Let's go over into Blender. Here is our character in Blender. Now what we're going to do to give our character expressions is we're going to use shape keys. And we add a lot of shape keys, and in each shape key we're going to have a unique facial expression. That'll give us a lot of natural feeling expressions. But it does have that advantage over bone-based facial animations, but it has the disadvantage that it's a mesh-based editing. So if we later change out the mesh, we're not going to be able to have those expressions anymore. We'll have to recreate them all. So, is this face mesh the one we want? What sort of problems do we have to look out for in the future because this face, what sort of changes might we want? For example, what happens if we want to re-import something from MakeHuman? Well, we'll get a new face, and it won't have any of the blend keys attached, and we'll have to remask, repaint all of those features. What a pain in the butt that would be. So, let's talk about that. And that's our pipeline issue of the day. Here is our face, and as you can see, it's also part of the body. All the pieces of the body that we have are attached to the head. The problem with this is, what if we ever want to put this guy in a t-shirt? He won't have any arms, have invisible arms. So we would have to re-import the character with a body that has arms, and then we wouldn't have our facial expressions anymore. How do we want to deal with that? Well, one way to deal with that would be to re-import the body right now with all the verts. We'll have some clipping issues, but there are ways to resolve that. And that's probably what we'll end up doing, but the other option is to cut the head off. Now, if I was working in anything other than Blender, it would be just automatic. Shoop, head gets cut off. The problem is, because that way, what I mean is that way you can just have whatever body you want. Import a new body, stick the head on, who cares? But the problem is that Blender is really aggressive about recalculating normals. If you cut someone's head off in Blender, the head isn't going to, it's going to have a really obvious seam. I'll show you. If we were to, I got a good mesh line here. Oh, that'll work, just for the show. If we hit H, we can hide everything, and then what we can do is we can just select the whole head and hit P to punch it out. And if you look, there's a really obvious seam. You can see that seam? That's because Blender is recalculating the normals, and it is saying that these edges don't have anything below them or don't have anything above them, so they need to be nice and rounded. And there's no way for us to edit the normals in Blender. In anything else, like Maya or Cinema 4D or whatever, there would be ways to edit those normals and make sure that they didn't do that. There just isn't in Blender. There is a way to permanently bake the normals, but unfortunately we want those normals to change as our face change. So, if we smile, we want our cheeks to bunch up and stuff like that. We just don't want that one line of normals to change. There's also a way to do it using data transfer, and it looks great in Blender, but it doesn't export properly. So that's useless. If it doesn't export, we can't use it. Well, that means that if we're stuck using Blender, we're stuck modifying the whole body mesh to make our facial expressions. Another option would be to put in a collar or something that would hide the seam, but that would be a pain in the butt. So we're just going to stick with the whole body, and that means we've got to re-import a body that has all the verts. While we're doing that, we might as well fix another little error. Here I am in MakeHuman, and this is the character as they exist, and we're going to go over to clothes. Now right now we've got all of our body is cut off. Just click this and it all comes back. There we are. Now we are naked under our clothes. That's solved. We're done, right? Well, it's worth talking a little bit about the T-pose. So here in the pose section, this is the quote-unquote none pose, and it's a really bad pose, and it's not generally recommended. I didn't change it last time, but I should have. The problem is that Unity will detect that these arms are bent and will make them into a proper T-pose. But Unity won't detect that these legs are bent. They're close enough to vertical that Unity will think this is actually where we want our legs to be. If you've ever gotten any canned animations off the asset store and used a make human character with them, you may have noticed that your character is really bandy-legged, like they've been riding a horse for 10 days. That's because Unity thinks that this is a straight leg. So what we're going to do is we're going to select the T-pose. And you can see how our legs came together a half block. And that will give a character a more natural feeling set of poses. Now we can export this. Taking its time, isn't it? There we are. So we can import it back into this file, but here's where we run into one of our first of many annoying little details. If we look over here into the materials section, this character has a bunch of materials attached to him. So, for example, middle-aged, light skin, that sort of stuff. But what happens if we... that's not materials, that's textures. Here it is. Caucasian male. But what happens if we import another object? So let's go ahead and delete all of these except for the sun. Oh, it deleted the sun anyway. Whatever. And then import. And then create a new sun. I've forgotten how to create a sun. Oh, whatever. Oh, it's in pose mode, that's why. How annoying. Create sun. Boom, we got a sun. Rotate. Rotate. There we go. Sorry about that. So anyhow, now that our character is back into Blender, it looks the same, right? But if we select this guy here, you can see that now it has a 0.001 at the end of the material name. Even though these materials are identical, we have an issue where the Blender file will remember the old materials and think the new materials need to be separated. And it'll create a whole new set of materials. The problem with that is that when we import that into Unity, we're going to have double the materials, and these materials need to have all of their textures reassigned again, and all of their transparency set up again. Or we can manually drag all of the materials back onto this character, but then we risk the next import overriding those manual changes. So this is why the pipeline is something you want to be careful of, because it's really easy to end up making a ton of work. The good news is we really haven't done very many things. No animations, really, nothing like that. So we might as well just create a new file like this, and then just import into a new file, and basically just redo the exact same thing we did the first time. There we are. That's it. If we switch on to materials, everything works. And if we save it as Craig.blend, it can go over into our system, and we will see that the character still looks right. However, we have deleted that animation, and we have skin underneath our clothes. So what we need to do to finish this up is we need to bring that animation back. This would be a real pain in the ass if I had done a lot of animations, but I didn't. I only did one animation, and it was crappy on purpose. Action editor. Let's go ahead and edit some actions. Bring the shoulders down. Bring the arms in. Of course, making a relaxed pose from a T-pose is a little bit more challenging, but that's fine. We're not that flustered. We can handle it. Let's do a robot pose. Bzz. I can even edit the spine if I want to give him just a little bit less of a weird look. Whatever. It doesn't really matter what we're doing because this is just, that's the core bone. Don't edit that. It doesn't really matter all that much. We're just trying to create a neutral situation. So select all, hit I, rotation, rename the action to the same name as it had before, which was idle01, and save it. Now we'll hop on over to Unity. There we go. And if we hit play, we will find that everything is back the way it was, with a little bit of skin pop through. Now, it'll be a while before we get to fixing that skin pop through, but I guarantee you we will. It's just going to have to wait until the body language section. Next episode, we're going to go ahead and create some facial expressions, and I think you'll find that it's not that hard, and that it's a lot of enjoyable stuff to happen. It's a fun thing to do, and it results in a great result, so let's enjoy it. First, though, I've got to figure out if I can get Blender to behave, which 50-50.